Hello YouTube viewers, welcome to my channel Science to Technology. In today's show, Rocket Monday, we're going to talk about SpaceX Starship Orbital launchpad that went boom. So let's dive deep into that boom. So when did this happen? The main event happened on basically 420 and 2023. So launch was destructive, as in like flat out destructive. And it was so destructive, it destroyed everything around it. And I mean 360-degree around it, because there was no wall, there was no trench. So everything got equal amount of love. So things were destroyed, thoroughly destroyed. And at this point in time, again, a full investigation report is not out while I'm making this video. You may find it by the time you are watching the video, but as of now, nobody has like concrete, like this is a 100-page report of it. However, all signs points to the fact that this went to boom is the biggest reason why rocket also went to boom, because it is the thing that damaged the engines. It is the thing that damaged the hydraulic pod. It is the thing that literally caused cascading failure, and maybe it directly also led to other system failing, which was caused other malfunctions and damage and all that jazz. So at this point in time, even if it may not be the root cause, it will be the triggering cause. Basically this triggered it and then something else went to boom. So at this point in time, this is a bad thing. If we had a perfect let's say launch pad that could handle it, there is a very good chance they may have reached a much higher altitude, much higher speed, or maybe even orbit. So all things considered, everything, all things point to this puppy. It's like this should not have went to boom, because it went boom and it took a rocket with it. So that's bad. And once the moment the rocket started to lift off, it was already damaged. So it was on borrowed time, and it was not damaged, oh, 3 engines are down. It was like injured kind of damage. And you can watch the video, and one pod going boom, you can watch other engine going poof, another engine going poof, and one engine spewing its own gut out. So it was on borrowed time at that point in time. So no, this is not a successful launch pad. Basically, rocket should be commended the fact that it survived this damage of a launch. If it had a good launch, there is a very good chance it may have reached much higher altitude. So it damaged it and destroyed everything. Now, odd part is that SpaceX knew, like their engineering team knew, that the concrete part, it's a weed fest. It's not gonna actually survive. Like everybody knows that concrete is not that strong, because concrete has this property of being micro cracks. Meaning, if you are talking about something that can handle compression, it's like concrete's like, I'm your guy. I got this. Very strong concrete that's like, God tier awesome. But here's it. It's almost like glass. Meaning, if structure is there and if there is no cracks on it, it's got tier strong. The moment you have micro cracks, it becomes like a glass. It's like shatters. So what does happen here? When your rockets were firing, there was micro cracks. Now in that micro crack, what are you firing there? Plasma. Basically, you are using a plasma lens to cut through that concrete. What happens once you cut through the concrete? The gases went inside, below the concrete layer. Once it reached there, it started to build up in pressure, and boom. And you can see that when this happened in the video of the launch event, because there are some cameras that are looking very up close and ground up, and you can see that when the concrete pad is intact, the smoke is white. The moment that soil gets up, it becomes a dark gray. Like color changes like this, and literally debris started to fly. Even though rocket engines have been on for a few seconds at that point in time, everything was fine. The moment that crack reached to the bottom, gas created a pressure, it exploded from the backside. The end. This is the result of inside out explosion. So they knew it. They knew it that concrete is a short-term solution, but not a really good solution. So they knew it, but they thought it should be able to handle one launch. And I'm like, what kind of logic is that? Like genuinely, I'm genuinely curious. It's like, what kind of logic says that it should be able to handle one go? It's like military does do something similar to that, but they know that if they're pushing something to that limit, it's like, yeah, it's gonna go away. You cannot afford this going away. So what? And be mindful, this is behind the tank wall, and you can see the giant chunk of concrete that fell in there. If it was a little bit different angle, there is a very good chance it would have ruptured many of the tanks, not one tank, many of the tank. That would have been, let's just say, painfully expensive to repair. So it caused a lot of damage. There is no discussion here. No, it annihilated everything. So that's the main event. So why the heck that happened? Well, reality is Elon Musk wanted to cheap out. Now, of course, it's his nature, and it's also his good approach, because that's the sole reason why SpaceX is so competitive. It's like he cuts cost. Wherever he finds the overhead, he's just like, yeet that out of there and benefit. SpaceX is very cost competitive. That's awesome. But there are some places where you do not do cost competitiveness. There are some places. There's like many places, go YOLO on it. Other places, how about we don't, try to rewrite the laws of physics? So that's the odd part. And the reason for that is, there are many places where NASA built a launch site, and the launch site was in a scenario where this area was protected. They did not get the permission to go YOLO deep onto it, or in some places where like it could not go deep simply because there was water table was too close to the surface, meaning if they start to dig deep, it's just water everywhere. So very hassle. So what they did is building mountains. They literally built artificial mountains, very shallow mountains, but the benefit was like it was very well controlled, very well engineered. They built it, and then they basically filled it in such a way that there is a trench left after it's done. Once they had trench, they put the concrete there. So this trench acts like it has support on both sides, so all the flame would be pushed on two sides and you can control it. So this structure is a known technology. It has been built for like, let's say 60 years, and we know how this works. This puppy can handle Saturn V. It can even handle basically Starship without any issue. This is a known technology. We know how far this puppy can go. And everything is awesome, everything is good, but there are some issues. These things consume money like there is no tomorrow. Meaning money, bye money. You don't talk about money here. You just let it go. The amount of money this puppy consumes, you just let it go. Blank check. You don't even give a blank check, you give a blank checkbook. So it's expensive. So they did not want to do that. Digging trench is cheaper in those sort of scenarios, but again, there was a risk that they may not get the necessary approval because the Boca Chica site that they have, it's protected area. They may not just get the license to like lol there. So that's a serious issue. And primary reason, you can see that if you have watched any basically SLS launch, it's very white. You watch any basically when they're testing the SLS core booster, every exhaust is very white. Why? It's steam. It's basically water vapor there. Now, when you are looking at something else which is not very clean, the like output has a certain color to it. This is a very weird color. It's neither clean nor dirty. So what is it? Soil or sand, to be more precise. So that's why the color is so weird, because the exhaust of this puppy should be almost clean, because again, it's a burning methane. So output is very simple things like basically carbon dioxide and lot of water vapor. So it should be very, very clean, but it's not, because again, soil is coming up. And this created such a big splatter, so to say, that sea is getting pachang. And this is a low resolution video. So trust me when I say this, that means that giant rocks are falling there. Like fundamentally, giant rocks are being ejected from the launch site and going around hundreds of meters and then going pachang. And that area is the protected area for sea turtles. So yeah, lol any sea turtles that was there at that point in time. So it's a very real thing. And again, you must have seen many times people put camera too close, but what happens to them? They generally burn, get damaged by the shockwave. Those things make sense. Rarely have you seen any scenario where it's like missiles are coming out of there. It's like, this should not happen. Fundamentally, this should not happen. So why the heck this happened? Again, the launch pad literally exploded from the inside. So this happened, and you can see that like before that concrete thing, you can easily see that. Please watch some of those videos and you will be shocked how clean it was. Like, oh, I got this. So like, nope, I don't got this. So why did that happen? Physics. They were perpendicular, meaning you look at any rocket launch system that is powerful rocket or even small rockets, there are always a very simple logic to it. You have the rocket, you never put perpendicular to it. No, this is a nope territory. You always make it 45 or like this, whatever have you, but you always angle it, meaning you never go bam, because if you go bam, there is a very good chance that I equals R could happen. Basically, it could act like what we call a retro reflector. Tweet, tweet, tweet. Retro reflecting will happen, and it will happen with acoustic waves, it will happen with debris, it will happen with heat, it will happen with the plasma. Not desirable. That's why no matter what you do, you never give it 90 degree. Always angle this. The moment you made it 90 degree, you literally guaranteed something bad happens. Like this is the one of the most known fundamental physics. It's like thou shall not give 90 degree. Thou shall not give this. No. Like every engineer must have been screaming when they're, especially the engineers that are from NASA, they must be screaming their lungs out. It's like, dude, what are you doing? What weed are you smoking? You do not do this. You don't. Like, no. This has to be like this, whatever angle. Maybe it's a very shallow angle, very subtle angle, but it has to be angled. You shall not give it 90 degree. Perpendicular is not allowed. They made perpendicular and it went to boom. So we come to the naughty daddy at this point in time, that is FAA. Now, FAA flat out at this point in time, while I'm making the video, they have launched a statement, so to say, that Starship is indefinitely grounded, meaning even if SpaceX has figured out a backup system, built on the system, repair everything, and like, okay, we are ready to go, they cannot launch it. License have been put on hold, so to say. Now, the reason for what they are saying, again, they are also doing their own investigation. It's going to take some time. But the primary reason they have is like flight termination system malfunction, meaning according to them, the flight termination signal was sent very early on. It's like rocket is going away from basically known trajectory, escaping the what we call corridor. Yeah, at that point, that's the time when you send boom signal. Though they send the boom signal, but something happened. Now, what happened at this point in time? There are two explanations. That signal took time to process, which does not make sense in modern computation, but could happen. Some fault happened, computer got error stuck, or something happened. Or the most likely explanation is that it did work. It did detonated the shape charges that are on the chassis and to cause damage to it, but it did not destroy the rocket. And that's a very big thing, because from the moment of sending boom signal to rocket actually going boom is 40 seconds. That's why rocket was tumbling, and that's not acceptable, because imagine if, again, this time they were very lucky, very clear, but what if they were going above any known area, or if they knew that if you go outside of this corridor, you are literally on top of a populated area. So the moment you go out of the corridor, launch corridor, you're like, yeah, boom. So that did not happen. That's not an acceptable risk. Basically, flight termination system is like, I press button that makes rocket go boom, rocket goes boom. Rocket must disappear out of existence. It should not go somersaulting 4 times and then falling apart. So there is a very serious risk. And it rained sand on safe zone. That's why I specified, like literally splattered sand so far out. Again, it was sending whole chunks, bricks, and this is a big ass brick, so to say, like, just chunk of computer. And that's a human hat. I love the photographer. He put a hat there to give some context of size. It's huge. If it had fallen on any house, bye-bye house. Any car, bye-bye car. Truck, bye-bye truck. So this is big, and it has been thrown out from there. Let that sink in. It will be like, whoosh. I don't think any bulldozer can throw it that fast, or JCB, so to say. So it's a very serious thing. And the rain that happened, the sand rain, happened on public area, meaning people who had nothing to do with it. They were just going about their day, and randomly sand started to. It also happened to everyday astronaut. So it's one of those things that's like, why the heck there is sand raining? Oh, your launch pad was 90 degree. It was perpendicular. But it happens. Now, then we come to the another aspect of flat out what they are doing is endangered species, meaning something that is already at risk, and they are amplifying the risk exponentially. That's just not acceptable. And at this point in time, 5 people, basically 5 organizations, have decided to launch missiles at FAA. They know for a fact that going after a SpaceX may not be a desirable thing. So they are launching missile directly at FAA. And looking at their case, it actually kind of makes sense, because what they are showing is like this 5 group, basically Center of Biological Diversity. I've linked the video with details on down below. You have Save RGV, and you have Americana Bird Conservatory, big people basically. And each of them have some significant power. Add 5 of them, they have serious amount of power. So the idea is that how the heck FAA granted a rocket launch pad license in a protected area? Like, how the heck that happened? Remove what SpaceX is doing. That's a lol thing. That's a private company doing private thing. Bye. How the heck that was announced? It's like this area is so protected, you will not allow anybody to build roads here, let alone petrol pump. And you are just like, hey, what about a rocket launch site? How the heck that happened? Like, what was the logic here? And it's kind of makes sense, because it's one of the comment of Elon Musk. I was like, dude, I know you are evil, but at least try to hide it. He was like, oh, this is just sand. I'm like, when did that happen? When did concrete become sand? Like, because again, my brother is basically industrial health expert. His job is to make sure when factories don't become death machine. He used to work on one, concrete plant. It's surprisingly a lot of things after sand that you have to add to make a concrete. It's not just like, oh, it's just sand. It's like, what the hell are you smoking? We put so many things in here that this puppy is toxic. Of course, not as toxic as if it was made out of mercury or cadmium or lead, but it's not natural. It's not sand. It's not sand castle. And this puppy is a bunker grade concrete. It's not going to degrade automatically very quickly. It may take years or maybe even decades to degrade. And be mindful, we build bunkers out of it and they survive. So what the hell is just sand? It's like, what? No, it's not sand. Flat out, it's not sand, it's concrete. Like, we built it to survive natural elements. This is not biodegradable. We worked our ass off to make sure this is not biodegradable, so your house does not dissolve in the rain. So it's like, it's a sand, it's non-toxic. It's like, no and no. Just no. That's flat out no. And this sort of tougher mix, yeah, good luck with that. Then the sand rain is very serious. especially for birds, and because here's the deal, humans can go out of way. They are like, okay, something bad is happening here, we eating out of there. Well, who's gonna, ask birds, hey, please go into your nest and all that? Nobody's gonna tell them. So they may be flying and bam, getting affected by rain of sand, which is not desirable. Then you have rain of concrete. This is very far away. But think about what would happen to small objects. Very, very far away. And I'm talking like around 1 kilometer from the dig site. So that's a very bad thing. Noise pollution of rocket is significant. Water deluge system could at least handle some amount of it, but you have zero of it. So that means almost 120 decibel of raw noise have been pumped into this area. Very few animals can just like, I got this. And if it is above 120, let's say it's 130, and God help it's around 140, nah, I genuinely hope it's around 120 or maybe 125. But be mindful, decibel scale is logarithmic. So even a little bit more above 120, it becomes brutal territory. Then you have particulate emission. While engines exhausts are like very clean, relatively speaking, it's still not absolutely clean, because your atmosphere has something known as nitrogen. Nitrogen in very hot temperature acts weird ways. So it could have emissions. It does have emissions. It's just that when you're launching the world's biggest rocket, so your emission platform is also the biggest. So that's an issue. And they're starting random wildfire every launch time nowadays. Every time they are doing something, random wildfire happens. Once in a while, wildfire happening, that's one thing. Natural wildfire, one thing. Human-made wildfire every time you are launching, that's not acceptable. Like, they are in a serious scenario, according to these people, is that they're going to do what we call slow kill. Meaning, today, if they're going to do a census, they're like, there were 500 pairs of healthy birds. Now it's like, 450. Nobody's going to notice too much. But here's the deal. It will be like 440. Then it will be like, 400. Then it will be like 350. Brick by brick. Their estimate is like 10 years of rocket launching from this site. This site is gone. Like, this site will become poofed. So that's a very serious issue. That's why they are firing missile at FAA, not at SpaceX. So let's see what happens. Then we come to what the heck SpaceX is going to do. SpaceX is going to do what we call water-cooled steel sandwich. And ironically, they knew that their concrete is not going to, and they were building this. This photograph is before the basically system, what you call launch event. They knew this, but their estimate was like, it just can survive one thing. It's like, if you would have just waited, and like waiting is expensive. Trust me, it's much cheaper than what happened now. So if they had just deployed this puppy, maybe this would have worked, maybe this still would have went boom, we don't know, but it would have been much better shot rather than having this. Like, I did not knew how deep it dug. Like, it's deep, as in like person can fall inside that kind of deep, while it had a thick layer of concrete, deep kind of scenario. So it's like very, very bad. So idea is they're gonna have thick metal plate and 2 metal plates. So they're gonna pump water with very high flow in there, and they're gonna be holes. Like, these holes are for receiving water, and then gonna be tiny holes for pumping water upwards. Now, idea is hopefully that water can create a curtain. That curtain will get what you call atomized, basically turn into small droplets because of the shock wave and the energy, and that is awesome. We want that. We want water to become quote unquote atomized. If that happens, it can act as a very good sound suppression. It can just like take very high shock wave and it's like, bro, chill. It can just like, bro, chill any shockwave. So that's desirable. And not to mention, temperature also goes down. So the idea is there. Now, there is a paradox here. Is like, if you want to water cool something, you may think, hey, I want thickest metal, then flowing a lot of water into. Not really. You want thin metal. Look at rocket nozzle. When they have like active cooling, they're very thin. The part where propellant or coolant is flowing versus the part that is on the hot side, it's very thin. It's designed to be very thin, so energy can carry away very quickly. For example, if you take let's say iron that is fully hot, you put a basically paper there, it does not burn instantly, and you can touch it and it will be very hot. You put a copy there, like a notebook, and notebook starts to burn, but you can put your hand behind it. Why? Heat takes time to go through material, whatever material it may. That's how we melt solder. That's how we do PCB board soldering and all that. Heat takes time to go through something. So there is a very serious risk. If you have something as hot as a rocket, there is a very serious risk. Rocket could just start to melt through before water can take the heat away, if you have thick enough steel. So they have to rely on the fact that they have pressurized water, and that water should be spewing out at enough rate that that should not happen, hopefully. So that's what we are hoping for at this point in time, and it should allow to basically reduce the energy, cool the everything down, and hopefully make sure the Starship is not damaged. That's hopeful, desirable situation. However, they are still aiming for perpendicular, and I'm like, nope. So my problem, guess again, I could be wrong. This system could be the most amazing system, and from future we will only use this thing. But my guess is against this. If they have perpendicular water system, no, like it has to be angled. It cannot be. This cannot happen. Like, because there is a very serious risk, it could create a shock bubble sort of scenario. Whereas like shock is creating a what you call tunnel. So water is not handling that area, and then it's like boom again. So that's a very serious thing. Let's see what happens. This is one of those things we will only know once we have tested it. But again, enough engineering has gone into the fact that we know that shall not have perpendicular. It's still building perpendicular. So let's see what happens. Then we come to the dangerous aspect. What can I expect happen in the future? Well, SpaceX messed up big time, flat out. This is a big mess up. It may look like, it's fun and a game. No, it's a big mess up. And the reason is that they knew it was a bad idea and they still did it. That's into a territory of like, bro, I don't think you understand the severity of that. It's not just like, lol, you rained sand on people who had nothing to do with it. That's not something. And I loved one of the newspaper who had a very smart article. It's like, SpaceX has always been doing this, like, build it, boom it, then build it, boom it, learn it, build it, boom it, learn and improve it. And it works. Awesome. But here's the deal, when you are increasing your rocket size exponentially, when your rocket is so big it makes Saturn V look small, that's no longer viable, simply because bigger rocket equals bigger mess. The boom is much bigger, the damage is much bigger, exponentially bigger. So the cleanup becomes almost untenable. Like, can they clean up every single concrete they put into the, like, let's say, protected marine environment? Hell no. They can't afford to do so. So that's the whole point. It's like, if your rocket is scaling up to that power level, you have to adopt responsibility of that power level. You cannot be like, hey, it's just a fancy Falcon 9. No, bro. Like, the boom potential of that is very brutal. The fact it made rain sand or somewhere kilometers away, that should give you a context. Like, this is not a mess that you can just like, lol, we build it, we boom it, and then we learn from it. It's like every boom could cause serious damage. And you are in a protected area. So that sort of damage is like, yeah, no. Now, another aspect is FAA really messed up, because here's the there are technology for what we call dry launch platform. For example, Russian launch pads. Why? Because many of these Russian launch pads are in the area where it's below freezing most of the time. Meaning, if they have water deluge system, it's going to freeze. So what they do? They just not 90-degree it. Basically, rocket exhaust, power, lot of power. And they're like, no. Simple, no water. Now, another aspect is, you may be like, why water is such an issue here if sea is there? You should not use salty water in rocket exhaust dampening system, simply because it's going to evaporate. And when it's going to evaporate, you are evaporating salty water and very high salt concentration, meaning every steel around it will corrode at exponentially higher rate. Fresh water also causes corrosion. Having salty water will cause exponential corrosion, meaning even the best steel will be like, bro, I can handle salty water. I cannot handle rocket level heated, superheated steam salty water, like flat out. Like, if you ever send that sort of steam into steam turbines, they're like, bro, I'm out. So that is one of those things that you may be like, hey, just pump the water. No, they need fresh water with low enough salt concentration. If it has too much salt, bad things could happen. So that's why this Russian system is like, again, it's a 50 years old system. We know this works. This is a tested system. It's like, just dig a hole, make sure it's not perpendicular, you give it an angle, and just like loll it out of the way. No problem. Now, where can they have this out of the way? They cannot have it on the seaside, because again, that's the protected area. Cannot have the backwards back at their own base. So left and right is the only vector for them. Let's see which they choose. But again, if they choose it, like that, I think that's another reason why he's just like perpendicular it. But again, physics is like, bro, thou shall not have perpendicular. Oh, there is a tank farm, so I don't think they can go this side. They have to go that side. So let's say which area is more precious in that sector. So that's up to them. Like, this is a dry launch platform is a known technology. How the heck they messed up that badly? It's beyond me. And area is very biologically important. Now, I do not give a damn about animals, but many people do. Many biologists do. Many people who are like very significant and powerful, they're like, no, we shall have serious laws to protect it. And there are some serious laws. And if they're like, bro, you cannot just like piss on the laws because like you are SpaceX and Elon Musk. And that's a valid thing. You want laws to be respected like that. So there is a very serious risk. They may have pissed off someone powerful, and they may need a big daddy of DARPA or Pentagon to save them. So let's see what happens in that area. So a lot of bad things have happened from both sides. Again, from FAA and SpaceX. Because here's the deal. If SpaceX does something stupid, FAA should be the smart one. Be like, bro, I know you are stupid. I know you are smoking weed. How about you ask your engineers? How about that? Or I will make a law that you have to do this, or I will invalidate your license. How about that? So they should have been one done, hey, just call up your Russian friends and it's like ask them how the heck you gonna build a dry launch system. It's a known technology. So it's a lot of mess has been created and it has to be handled delicately at this point in time. So let's see, I do expect it's going to take quite a while before we see another launch, quite a while. Like, take your time, enjoy, even forget about this, like how we forgot like from the last launch to this launch. That sort of thing will happen here again. So this was my launch, my launch, I'm saying. This was my presentation on Launchpad going boom. Hopefully you have liked it, learned from it. In that case, please click the like button, share it amongst your friends. That will help me a lot. If you didn't like it, didn't enjoy it, I urge you to press dislike, press it twice to show me extra disappointment. Please leave a comment because I do try to reply to all of them. Subscribe, press the bell icon if you're free. And as always, thanks for watching.